Hello everyone, it's nice to have you join us on today's episode. And in today's episode, we'll be talking about linking or including JavaScript code in HTML. Before I show you how to do that, I'll be talking about the script and its attributes. In our previous videos, I've talked about the script tag, which is what we have right here on our screen highlighted. The script tag is used to include JavaScript codes into our HTML file or our Markdown file. It has some attributes, which includes the source attribute that specifies the path to the JavaScript file, either a relative or an absolute URL. The source attribute, which is what you can see here on our screen, highlighted, source attribute SRC. It's used to specify either the absolute path or the relative path to the JavaScript document. As you can see here, we have path to document. This is the value of the script, the source tag. So to create a JavaScript file, we go into our folder that we've been using since the inception or since the beginning of this tutorial, which is the web. We created the folder web and created the file inside of it called index.html. So right now, in our assets folder, which we also created inside this folder called web, we had CSS folder also, where we created our desktop style.css and mobile style.css. So inside the assets folder, we'll be creating a folder called JS. And inside of that JS folder, we'll be creating a file called script.js. Initially, I told you that all programming languages, including Markdown files, which is HTML, has its extensions. So for HTML, we have .html. For CSS, we have .css. And now we'll be creating for JavaScript, which will be .js. So in order for us to create our file, first we said we'll be creating it inside a JS folder. And then we create our script file called .js. So hit the enter, and now we've created a folder inside the assets folder, where we now have JS folder. Inside the JS folder, we have our script file. So with this, we have created a simple JavaScript file. Now, back to our script tag. Like we said, the first attribute that is required is called the source attribute. The next attribute that should actually go in here is called the type attribute. The type attribute is used to specify the meme type. This attribute is required in HTML4 but optional in HTML5. Yes, it's optional in HTML5, but there are some cases where it is required. In a case whereby you need to pass a module, there's something we call module. But by the time we'll be learning about JavaScript, then you will learn what is called module. So we write its value with the type attributes, module. Some people call it module. I don't know. I think the Americans call it module. But like I said, I'm a Nigerian, so I pronounce it the way we do. Module. Yeah. So going on, the type attribute, like I said, it specifies the meme type. The attribute is not required in HTML5. It's optional in HTML5, but it's required in HTML4. So the next attribute, oh, before I forget, the other value of the type attribute can be text slash script. Yeah, just like in the case of CSS, where we have text slash where we have text/CSS, and in the case of this, we have application RSS. I talked about all those in our previous um, videos or episodes. So in today's own, the type attribute is also required in the script tag with the text/script value or a module value. Like I said, it is optional in HTML5, which is our current HTML. I won't be teaching HTML4. There will be no need actually to teach HTML4 because the world is actually diversifying. We are going forward, not going backward. So there will be no need of teaching you HTML4 because I don't think you will ever come across it again. Most of the HTML4 documents in the past must have been upgraded to HTML5 because modern browsers actually work with HTML5. Browsers have been updated regularly. Mm, the question might be running through your mind, might be, what if we come across that document? Uh, for now, there will be no tutorial on HTML4. So we'll just be moving on with HTML5. The next attribute we'll be talking about is the async attribute. It actually doesn't have a value. Async. It doesn't have a value. What it does is specifies the scripts shall be executed asynchronously only for external scripts. That is, scripts that are gotten from an external source. The attribute does not require any value except of XHTML. Yes, it doesn't require any value, like I told you initially. The async attributes do not require any value. It is used to load scripts from an external source asynchronously. That is, scripts that are not actually in or within your applications folder, just like this one here. We have script. It is currently in our application, but we can have a situation whereby we'll be looking for a script like the bootstrap JavaScript file from its CDN. You won't understand what CDN is for now. So it's like a public library where tons of scripts are being loaded. Sure, if you have your own scripts which it's favorable or can be used by other developers, you can equally host it there. It's an open source library actually that you can then just import or link, connect to your document to. So while linking from an external file, there you have your absolute URL, which will include the HTTPS, www dot, and so on. So the path to the document. So while doing that, you will want to use the async attribute. It's a Boolean attribute indicating that the browser should, if possible, load the script asynchronously. This attribute must not be used if the source attribute is absent. Yes, yes. That's simply because we can actually write our JavaScript code in between the script tags. So while writing JavaScript codes in between the script tags, the source attribute is actually not required. I'll show you how to write um, JavaScript codes in between the script tag and also show you how to do so with an external script file. So browsers usually assume the worst case scenario and load scripts synchronously. That is, the async attribute will be false. So like we initially said, it's a boolean, it requires a boolean value, but by default it is false except it is specified as true. So dynamically inserted scripts using document or create elements. By the time you get to JavaScript tutorials, you will actually know what document or script element does. It's a function in JavaScript that is used to create an element or a tag. It loads asynchronously by default. So to turn on asynchronous loading. So that's what it does. The next attribute of this script tag is called the differ. It specifies that scripts shall be executed when the page has finished loading, only for external scripts also. This attribute does not require any value, same as the async attributes, defer. It doesn't require any value. So if we look in details, it's also a Boolean value. It's the scripts with the differ attribute will prevent the DOM content loaded event from firing until the script has loaded and finished evaluating. That is, the DOM events will not be fired until every document, every other script like your HTML document has been loaded completely. This attribute must not be used if the source attribute is absent. Yes. Same reason for the async also applies to it. To achieve similar effects for dynamic inserts, scripts use async false. Instead, scripts with the differ attributes will execute in the order in which they appear in the document. Yes, like I told you in some of our previous episodes, um, documents are being loaded from the top to the bottom. So, in the order that they are being arranged, that's how the scripts will be loaded. The next attribute that we're talking about is the character set. The character set specifies the character encoding used in external scripts. By default, it is UTF-8 for browsers. Like I told you, there are other character set encodings. I have initially talked about character set in our previous video. It's actually optional because by default, the browser understands that it is UTF-8 and uses UTF-8 encoding to load scripts or the entire document, the entire page. UTF-8. That's its value. The next one we're talking about is the cross origin. The cross origin specifies how elements handles cross origin requests. Same rules that applies to that of CSS. If you haven't watched my previous video, please do so. And in the case of including CSS files, I think that's the title. I will include it down in the description below. So do check the description and you'll find the link to the previous videos that references how to include CSS files in HTML. So the next attribute that I will be talking about is a noise. Cross origin. Yes, it's either anonymous or use credentials. That's if it requires authentication, its value for cross origin is either by anonymous or using credentials. The use credentials is in a case whereby it requires authentication also. So the noise attribute is a cryptographic noise used in content security policy check. Yeah, it's not required for now, but in the case of Web3, whereby you're working with um, blockchain and the rest of its kind, I think it's used frequently there. So for now, it's just noise. Noise. That's it. Noise. That's the attribute. Nonce. That's the attributes. I actually don't know its value for now, but by the time we'll be learning JavaScript in details, I will tell you what its value entails. So handling disabled JavaScript. Some of our videos back then, I told you that JavaScript could be disabled in the browser. So right now, I'll be telling you about handling disabled JavaScript. It is possible that the client browser does not support JavaScript or the JavaScript execution engine is disabled, perhaps due to security reasons. To be able to tell users that a script is supposed to execute in the page, the no script tag can be used. The content of the no script tag is displayed whenever JavaScript is disabled for the current page. Yeah, for the current page. So, like I have shown this previously on our previous videos. This is the no script tag. The no script tag is used. The no script tag is used to display a message to the users when the JavaScript engine is disabled on the browsers. Either JavaScript is not supported by the browser or is disabled by the user. So JavaScript will not be. We'll be creating a script. Let me show you first how to write a script in between the tags. To do so, if you are writing a script in between the tags, you don't require most of these attributes, but you require the type, like I said, is optional, which can be text slash script, and then in between our opening and the closing tags, we can then write our script. So right now I'll be writing just a simple code, which is documents dot write. This function actually writes it actually writes uh, a text or whatever into or on the web page. For instance, let's say hello world. So what this does, it writes hello world to the web page. So we'll be running our file or site using live server. So running our site using live server while we wait for it to come up. Right, that's our web page. We have our first text that says, "This is my first website." If you go to our web page, we have it right here. This is my first website. And then we have a script that says document.write hello world. It's write is a function of this particular document. The document you see is referring to the markdown file. Now the write is a function of JavaScript that writes a text on the screen. So like we have here on our site, we have hello world and we have this. Now, if you watch closely on our site, we have something again called JavaScript is disabled, which is in between our no script tag. Now, like I said, this only fires up whenever JavaScript is disabled. If you go to our browser and then go to these options and down to settings, and if we search for JavaScript, go to site settings if you're in Chrome and scroll down to JavaScript. Right here, if you say do not allow JavaScript do not allow sites to use JavaScript. Right now, JavaScript is disabled. And now back to our web page. If we should reload, you now have script is disabled and we don't have our hello world anymore. But we still have this text because it's just a H1 tag, which doesn't require JavaScript to be displayed. So the only thing that requires JavaScript to display is whatever is inside the script tag. For it to run, JavaScript must be enabled. Now, in this case, we have disabled JavaScript and we no longer have this. But now we have JavaScript is disabled on our web page. JavaScript is disabled. If we should go back and enable JavaScript on our web page or site, and then back to our web page and reload, you now see that the JavaScript is disabled is now hidden, and we now have hello world. So if JavaScript is disabled, to determine it, we have to use the no script tag in HTML to determine if JavaScript is disabled or not. I hope that is very well understood. Now, the next thing we'll be talking about is linking to an external JavaScript file. Yes, so we can actually link our document to an external JavaScript file using the source attributes. The source attribute works like the href attributes on anchors. You can either specify an absolute or relative URL. So we'll be creating our text example on how to link a JavaScript file to our HTML document. To do that, we use the source attributes. Like we said, you can either specify an absolute URL or a relative URL. So right now, we'll be using a relative URL, which is going to point to the script tag we created initially. So to do so, we then have to specify our assets folder / the JS folder. There we have our script file. So we then write / scripts.js. So with this, we have actually linked our document or linked our script file to our HTML document. So in order to actually prove that we have done that, remember our example of document.write hello world that we wrote in between this section. We will now be doing that inside our inside our script file. So we could just write documents.write hello world. Now if you go back to our web page and reload, you get to see hello world right here. If we should remove this out and reload our web page, we no longer have it. And if you check on our markup file, we only have this script tag linking to the script.js file. Now you can see that we then have hello world on our screen. So that's how we can actually link an external or relative script file to our HTML document. I've showed you how to directly include JavaScript code by doing this in our HTML um, document by writing this document.write hello world. So you can either do it directly or you do it by writing or specifying the path to a JavaScript file using the source attributes. And there we go. So now we'll be including a JavaScript file that will be executing asynchronously. Now, to do that, we have to specify our type. Oh, I made a mistake. Remember, I said the type is the value for the type attribute is text / JavaScript, not text / street. If you noticed initially when I was actually doing this, when I did this, it was actually kind of white. It was white when I said text / script. If you noticed, I had this until I then removed my type attribute entirely, then it became this. So this text editor actually helps you with colors to actually know when there is an error with your code. So when I did that initially, I was actually skeptical about it. I was having type of text / script. It wasn't supposed to be text / script, it's supposed to be text / JavaScript. So when I write text like JavaScript, you can see that we then have it colored. So this is a means to directly impute our script inside the HTML document. So I want to show you how to asynchronously do so. If you want to do that asynchronously, why specifying While specifying the external document by using the source attribute. The attribute after specifying the path, it could be let's say https forward slash elitecodec.com.ng forward slash assets forward slash scripts forward slash bootstrap. Is that the spelling? Bootstrap.js. Let's say this is an absolute URL to a file or a JavaScript file that is online. Now, we want this script to be loaded asynchronously. The moment someone visits our site, we don't want this script to load immediately. This script is actually not on the server currently. I just assumed this URL, so it might not work. It will not. It might not. It will not work. So I'm just using this for example um, cases. So we can then specify our async attribute. So what this does right now is our script file, instead of this one right here, we are now specifying this from a site online, that is the Light Codec site, which is online. We will be specifying, we'll be looking for the including a script from that site to this particular site. So to do so, we don't want it to actually load immediately the page loads. We want it to load after the page loads. So after everything on the page has loaded, this will then quickly, it will just fetch it after the page has loaded and then include it. That's just it for including and executing JavaScript files. So we'll come to the end of today's episode with including JavaScript in HTML. I believe we've grabbed something on today's episode, and I'll be seeing you in the next episode, which will be talking about using HTML with CSS. Before I go, do not forget to subscribe and turn on your notification icon so as to receive updates on tutorials such as this. Bye and see you